coaches 1 through 14. As with every list, there is something wrong with this one as well. We'll start with number 14, work our way up to number 1. Number 14, I understand why it's there. I don't think it's very fair considering the mountain that he was up against, but Vanderbilt's Clark Lee ranked number 14 out of 14 coaches in the SEC. It's not fair, but I get it.
Yeah.
He was a good, really good DC, and he's got an impossible job. It's just an impossible job.
He might be a good head coach. He might be a good head coach, but we'll never know while he's at Vanderbilt.
See this line right here. This is why I love list season, because people write stuff like this, and I find it just ridiculous. He hasn't transformed Vanderbilt into a destination for high-end talent and has a massive uphill climb to even become relevant. First of all, he's been the coach for a year, Barrett. 1 year. Yeah. How can you even charge him with that? And number 2, it's not possible there. It's not possible there. You can't do that at Vanderbilt anymore. They're not investing anymore. They don't care anymore. They never have, I suppose. But it's especially evident now in the ever-changing landscape of college football. They are the least willing and able, really, to adapt. They're not doing it. Anyway. Number 13, Brian Harson. I think that's a little unfair to Harson because he was quite good at Boise State, but here's what they say at CBS. Year 1 was a disaster for Harson. Tigers finished 6-7, their first sub-500 season since 2012, which was so unacceptable on the Plains that a group of influential boosters attempted a coup in an attempt to fire him in the week of National Signing Day in February. It was more than just a coup. It was a hit job, but point still stands. He's had a hard time retaining assistants and isn't recruiting anywhere close to the level that needs to be done in order to win in the SEC. 13?
Okay. Sure.
I would have him ahead of Drinkwitz again because Drinkwitz has only had his 1 year at Appalachian State. Good year. 1 year.
Yeah.
And has been, frankly, very unimpressive so far at Missouri.
They went to a bowl game his first year, right? I mean, it's 2020, so kind of everybody went to a bowl game.
And they did go this year and this past year and lost to Army.
I mean, Harson was not. I feel bad for Harson, and I feel bad for him on a number of levels, but clearly not Auburn's first choice when he got the job. Took over a program that was not in position to succeed, and he's underachieving relative to that program. I mean, I know I hit on Auburn all the time, but they are a program that you can see win 9, 10, 12 games. So. He's not gonna do that. So I don't have a problem with Harson being here. It's either him or Drinkwitz. That's just the way it is.
Drinkwitz at 12, limited sample size, has plenty of work to do with the Tigers, going 11-12 in 2 seasons, but he's earned a bowl berth in both of those seasons, and did go 12-1 in that only season as head coach at Appalachian State. I can't find anybody aside from Vanderbilt less interesting, and almost all of the Power 5. I said almost, not all of the Power 5, but almost all of the Power 5 than Missouri this year. I can name every team in the SEC, with the exception of Vanderbilt and Missouri, and say, I'm excited to watch them because of this. I'm excited to watch South Carolina because Spencer Rattler's redemption tour. I'm excited to watch Mississippi State because, well, I have to talk about them every day, but Mike Leach in the air raid. Lane Kiffin's teams and offenses are always entertaining. Mark Stoops in Kentucky, can they be a contender in the East? They have a lot of guys back. It should be a really good football team. People think Will Levis is a first-round pick, and on and on and on. Every team in the SEC is worth it. And then there's Missouri and Vanderbilt. Just an afterthought.
Missouri, I will say this. Missouri is a team that can be exciting. They could somehow get out to a great start and make it interesting. But as we sit here in June or July now, no, I'm not excited for Missouri football.
Shane Beamer at 11. I understand the ranking, although I think that in a couple of years this will change dramatically. Here's what they say. Beamer's first season as head coach in college football ended with Beamer getting a mayonnaise bath after winning the Duke's Mayo Bowl. That, despite struggling to find consistency at the quarterback position all year. They were very, very injured at that spot. Not particularly good in talent either, what he took over. He lured ex-Heisman Trophy frontrunner Spencer Rattler to Columbia to fix the problem and reeled in a top 25 recruiting class. The East is becoming a tough neighborhood, which will challenge Beamer moving forward.
I think if you rated the top 10 young coaches or second-year head coaches, he might be in the top. He might be close to the top. Being the 11th best coach in the SEC, it's kind of like being the 11th best player in the SEC. Still a really good coach. I think Beamer's a good young coach. He's got that program going in the right direction. I am excited to watch South Carolina football in 2022.
He's a big-time energy guy. And sometimes...
But it's not corny.
No.
It doesn't come across like... Drinkwitz comes across as corny.
PJ Fleck
Beamer comes across as... Yeah. Beamer just comes across as a guy who's fired up to play. There's a lot of Will Hall in him to me. They're similar guys.
When you hear him talk, you think that's him. Nothing's forced. There's no gimmick. That's just him.
You can tell he was the son of a coach, too.
Yeah.
Same with Will Hall.
No doubt. He also looks like Dad. Shane looks like Frank.
Yeah.
For
sure. They got enough. Yeah, you can tell whose son. Yeah.
Josh Heupel, Tennessee number 10. Says Tennessee fans have been waiting to get excited about football for more than a decade. Well, a lot of people have been telling them they're back for them to just not be back, but point still stands. And Heupel did just that in his first season on Rocky Top. His 7-6 record doesn't jump off the page, but he developed Hendon Hooker into a dark horse Heisman Trophy contender heading into 2022 and has established a hurry-up offense that produces more fireworks than a July 4th party. When you factor in his 28-8 record and 3 seasons at UCF, it's understandable to be excited for what he can do in the SEC East.
Again, it's sort of the same thing. I think Heupel's a really good coach, but somebody's got to be 10th.
Number 9, Billy Napier. Billy Napier, the Gators are counting on Napier succeeding in Gainesville on the same way that he did in his 4 seasons as head coach at Louisiana, led them to 3 straight double-digit wins. You guys know the rest. I find it fascinating that Billy Napier had to write an open letter to his fans, essentially saying, if you're mad about my recruiting, pay more. He didn't say those words, but if you read the letter, you know that that's what he's saying. Florida fans have been discouraged by how recruiting has gone so far under Billy Napier. And he's essentially blaming his fans for it. A weird dynamic going on there right now.
I think you're going to start seeing some coaches come out and do stuff like that, though. He won't be the only one who's got to kick his fans in the butt a little bit and be like, this is the new way forward. We have to do it or we will fall behind. And you'll have no one to blame. It won't be my fault when we can't recruit elite players because we don't have NIL money.
I find it crazy that that's a situation that Florida finds itself in.
That's more surprising, yes. That Florida doesn't have money just laying around, but it is what it is.
We got time for one more. Number 8, actually, we're going to tease that. Number 8, we'll get to that on the list coming up next. CBS's ranking of SEC coaches 1 through 14. Again, number 14 was Clark Lee. Brian Harson at 13, Drinkwitz at 12, Shane Beamer 11, Josh Heupel at 10, Billy Napier at 9. We'll give you the rest of the SEC when we come back, including where Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin fall on this list. And no shakeup at number 1. Spoiler alert, it's Nick Saban. But we'll get to the rest when we come back. At Sports Talk Mississippi, you want to be a part of the show, we'd love to have you on the text line, 601-879-4395. That's the C Spire text line. List of the SEC coaches ranked 1 through 14. We did 14 through 9. Number 8, here we go, Mike Leach, Mississippi State, obviously. Here's what Barrett Sallee says. The Pirate hasn't transformed the Bulldogs into SEC West contenders yet, but he did manage to post a 7-win regular season in 2021, which included wins over Auburn, Kentucky, and Texas A&M, all of which were ranked at the time. He has developed quarterback Will Rogers into one of the nation's most prolific passers, and he is always a headache for opposing defensive coordinators. Last year, for what it's worth, he was ranked number 9.
So go ahead and go to number 7, because that's the discussion I want to have.
All right, number 7, Sam Pitman, Arkansas. In just his second year as coach at a 4-year college, Pitman led the Razorbacks to a 9-4 record in the top 25 ranking, the first time they have appeared in the AP top 25 since 2011. Sure, the 11-9-1 record from 1992-93 at Hutchinson, Kansas Community College was nice. I forgot that he coached there once. But that pales in comparison to what he's done in just 2 seasons in Fayetteville. Not only has Pitman enjoyed success on the field, but he has made Arkansas a desirable program for high school and transfer prospects. Recruiting rankings in July don't matter. Arkansas is ranked really, really high because they have a full class of not great recruits. Floor is yours.
So, I say this as a guy that you've heard me on the show, right? I like Pitman. I think Arkansas is finishing second in the West this year. He's a good coach. But as mentioned here, his record as a Power 5 head coach is 12-11. Mike Leach is 150 and 103. What are we judging this off of? Because they finished with the same record in conference play last year. The difference is Arkansas had a great win over Texas.
Well, was it a great win?
State had it. Well, I mean, at the time it was.
Felt like
I mean, at the end of the day, Memphis went to a bowl and Texas didn't. But State has the bad loss to Memphis, right? They were both 4-4 in the conference. Obviously, Pitman has had Leach's number thus far. But are we basing this off of their entire resume? If we're doing that, Harson should probably be higher. But I just don't see how you can say, and maybe I'm a homer. If I am, I'll wear it, that you're just going to put Pitman above Leach. Leach has done it for a longer time, has won at programs you don't traditionally win at, has had huge seasons. I just don't, I'm not saying that Leach should be top 2 or 3 or anything, but I would have Leach ahead of Pitman.
Well, and what's so fascinating here is because the counter argument to what you're saying is, well, Pitman took over a more difficult situation at Arkansas. And I don't think that that's something that I'm willing to argue, but that's also being dismissive of what Mike Leach had to do at Mississippi State to run his system. Now, some people say, well, you should cater your system to your personnel. Mike Leach doesn't do that. To his fault or credit, I don't know, but he doesn't do that. He had to turn a roster that was built for running the football, power running. What was the running joke with Mississippi State fans? Always run, never pass. And he had to turn that into always pass, we may run sometimes, but I'll let you know. And that system change, that style change, has growing pains in it. It's not as simple as coming in, snapping your fingers, hey, this roster is going to run the air raid and it's going to be smooth. That was never how it was going to go, which is why I spent the offseason when we weren't talking about COVID going into 2020 saying, hey, guys, it's going to be hard. It's not going to feel good. It's not going to look good because the team's not built for that.
Leach, the worst thing that happened to Leach was that game against LSU. The absolute worst thing. Winning that game, not only winning it, but throwing for 630 yards and breaking that record set a standard that could not possibly have been achieved again.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that State shouldn't have been better than the 3-7 that they were. They were a much better team than what lost 24-2 to Kentucky. But that they were never always going to be like that.
No.
Somebody was going to do something different.
So there were always going to be growing pains. And I think people so often get distracted by goofy that they don't look at body of work. And a similar-ish phenomenon happens with Lane Kiffin as well. People get distracted by the Twitter stuff and the taking shots at Jimbo and the always going fishing and his dog's Twitter account and stuff. People get distracted by the fact that when you look at him, dude can coach. Same thing with Mike Leach. Yeah. He's a goofy guy that talks about mascots and he'll go off on these
but
tirades.
Then on Saturday, his team throws for 500 yards and scores 30-plus points and usually wins.
And it bears repeating that his 2 previous stops for Mississippi State are among the 2 more difficult places to win in Power 5 football. What was Washington State before he got there? They had a Rose Bowl appearance before I was born. Sure.
Yeah.
What has Texas Tech been since he's left? Nothing.
You can say that Leach picked the most difficult spots in the Big 12 and in the Pac-12, and then outside of Vanderbilt in the SEC.
And so it's crazy. It blows my mind, right? Like, I'm not even totally convinced that State's going to be like a 10-win team this year or whatever. I think there's a chance that they look kind of similar to last year. I think there's a chance that happens. Truthfully, I know some people won't like this. I think Mike Leach will be more successful with a more dynamic quarterback, and I think that's coming. I'm sorry if that offended people, but I believe that to be true. I think once he's able to get a more dynamic quarterback, the team will be better. And I don't know if he has that today.
We'll see.
And I know that will bug some people. But I think that will get there. And I think if you're dismissing his body of work at these other places and putting Sam Pitman ahead of him, you're nuts. I think you're absolutely nuts. But that's just me. And you and probably a lot of other people as well.
Probably so.
So Pitman at 7, Lane Kiffin at 6. He said Kiffin was a joke after getting fired at USC in 2013, but he transformed his career as an assistant under Saban from 14 to 16. That launched him to Florida Atlantic, where he went 26-13, had 2 double-digit win seasons and won 2 division titles. He moved on to Ole Miss and led the Rebels to a 10-win season and a Sugar Bowl berth in just his second year. Fair spot?
I think when you look at the 5 guys in front of him, that this is where Kiffin goes. That he's just, there's 5 really good coaches here. Now, I don't agree with the where those guys are ranked necessarily, but I do agree that those 5 guys are ahead of Kiffin.
Yeah. This isn't the rationale he's going with, but if I was, say, Texas A&M, with all my resources and recruiting and all that, and you told me today, pick a coach, I'm picking Lane Kiffin over Jimbo Fisher.
Yes.
With all the resources and stuff available to him, I'm picking one over the other. I don't think Lane Kiffin, for example, would have gone 8-4 last year at Texas A&M. That's just, I could be wrong. I don't think he would have.
I agree. I think I agree with you.
And the money sells itself on the recruiting trail, as we talked about earlier. Number 5, Mark Stoops, feels underrated but also appropriate at the same time. He's done a really good job. Here's what Barrett Sully at CBS says. Is there a more underrated coach in the country than Stoops? It's doubtful. His only sub-500 season since 2015 was during the COVID year in 2020, which can be excused to an extent due to the uncertainty that programs had to deal with for 9 months. His Wildcats have 2 10-win seasons and have gone to 6 straight bowl games, with 4 wins during his time in Lexington. Football used to be a distraction prior to the start of basketball, not anymore.
So this is something that bothers me that people do. When you say somebody is underrated, but you're doing the ratings,
then
rate them properly. You have the power. Stoops should be ahead of Jimbo Fisher. Simple as that. Fisher, I know, has a national title, but we're going on, that was 9 years ago. Long time. And Stoops has done a better job building that Kentucky program than Fisher has done at Texas A&M. There's no getting around that for me. So, Kentucky was awful when Stoops took over. He has turned them into a consistent 8-9 win program with the ability to get up to 10. They will probably win 10 this year. They will have a better record than Texas A&M does this year. That's a Brian Haydad hot take if you want one. Stoops should be ahead of Fisher. This is where Fisher should be. He should be 5th.
I don't hate that. We'll finish the list when we come back. Sports Talk Mississippi. I'm Michael Borky. He's Brian Haydad. You want to be a part? You can. 601-879-4395. This list, this coaches ranking in the SEC. If you're just joining us, CBS ranked the SEC coaches 1 through 14. 14 was Clark Lee. 13 was Brian Harson. 12 was Eli Drinkwitz. 11, Shane Beamer. 10, Josh Heupel. 9, Billy Napier. 8, Mike Leach. 7, Sam Pitman. 6, Lane Kiffin. 5, Mark Stoops. 4, Brian Kelly. This is what they say. First-year coach of the Tigers led Notre Dame to 2 college football playoff berths and a spot in the BCS championship game during his 12-year tenure in South Bend. Quick question, how did those go?
They went all right.
Not particularly well, if I remember correctly.
They got to the game.
That success came despite academic and geographic challenges that make it difficult to sustain success in the elite level. Oh, spare me. Spare me the Notre Dame's a hard job thing. I know that we're doing that now, that all their academic standards are so tough. They've recruited well, very well. It doesn't appear to be a hindrance. Look at what they're doing right now. They are wiping the floor with summer recruiting right now. Killing it. Blue chippers everywhere. The same people that talk about how Notre Dame, the Big Ten needs to add Notre Dame because it's a great brand and players want to play there and all this stuff. And on the other hand, well, Brian Kelly, a really hard job at Notre Dame. You can't recruit there. Which one's true? Is it a great place to coach and win? An attractive job, or is it really hard to win? Because Vanderbilt's a place where it's really hard to get players and win. Northwestern's a place where it's really hard to get players and win. Notre Dame has demonstrated the ability to recruit at a high level. Anyway. Thoughts
There's
at him
your
at
rant
number
for Notre
4?
Dame. It's fine. It's fine. Maybe I should have him third and Stoops fourth, just based on their resumes. But I would have him ahead of Jimbo, for sure.
Number 3, Jimbo. Fisher became the first Saban disciple to beat his boss when his Aggies won a thriller last season in College Station. That came 1 year after they entered Selection Sunday with a legit chance to make the college football playoff. He hasn't reached the top at A&M, but he did win a natty at Florida State after the 2013 season. That is 9 years ago after I do a little math, which has to be factored into his ranking. I do agree with that to a point. He has upped the recruiting in his new gig to levels the program has never seen and will likely enter the 2022 season with a top 10 ranking.
So this is sort of the opposite. Him being this high is the opposite of Leach and Pitman, right? We're looking at Leach. We're not looking at Leach's whole career, obviously, when we rank him behind Sam Pittman. But we are going to look at Jimbo Fisher's whole career when we rank him ahead of Brian Kelly and Mark Stoops. At A&M, Fisher has 9-4, 8-5. He does have that 9-1 year, and then 8-4. So I mean, he's underachieved at Texas A&M the way every coach has underachieved there since the early days of R.C. Slocum. I just don't get it. I think that this A&M team is a 4-loss team as well. I think that they will lose games. So I get that he's recruiting well. I get that. Great for him. But his results are not more impressive than what Mark Stoops has done at Kentucky.
Number 2, Kirby Smart. Number 1, Nick Saban.
Yeah, no, nothing required.